Welcome to another episode of Workplace Wire. If you're new here, we are an IO psychology podcast where we discuss interesting topics for how people, performance, and culture shape the way we work. From leadership and motivation to hiring, teamwork and well-being, Workplace Wire breaks down research and real-world practices to help organizations and individuals thrive. I am your host, Jasmine Owens, and I am a current graduate student of the University of Maryland, pursuing my master's in IO psychology. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting topic, and that topic is how to keep the human touch in the candidate experience in the evolving world of AI. I'm really excited about this topic. I'm also really excited about our special guest we're having today. We have Faustina, who is a professor of IO psychology at Michigan State. We have Cristina, who is our senior director of people and culture at Common Grid Global, and Brigitte, who is the head of talent management for a Fortune 100 company. So excited to have you guys. Before we jump into this, I want you to just tell everybody about yourself, a little bit about your background.
Thank you so much for having us here. We're really excited to talk about this topic. So my name is Faustina Arrossi. I completed my PhD in IO psychology at Michigan State University. I wrote my dissertation on algorithmic decision making and its impact on perceptions of fairness in hiring. Currently, I teach graduate courses in personnel selection and organizational behavior, but I'm currently conducting research on integrating psychological theory with emerging trends in automation in recruiting.
Yes, awesome. Nice to meet you, Faustina. And again, thank you, Jasmine, for having us on your podcast. My name is Cristina Barbee. I am the Senior Director of People and Culture at Common Thread Global. I have 15 years of experience in human resources and talent strategy. I also hold an MBA and a master's in industrial organizational psychology. So what that means is I approach people and decisions with both a business and a behavioral science lens. Throughout my career, I've focused on building equitable human-centered recruitment systems that prioritize transparency, feedback, and trust. And as AI becomes more embedded in hiring, I'm very passionate about keeping ethics and empathy front and center.
Yeah, and I'm Brigitte Guidice. Thanks so much, Jasmine, for having me join the podcast today. I'm really excited. I am the head of talent management at Elite Financial. I've been here for about 10 years, and prior to this, I was at Goldman Sachs. So I have a strong background in the finance industry, in the banking industry. And one thing that I'm currently working on at Elite Financial is I'm part of the HCM AI working group. And this is a group where we are delegated with the task to figure out how AI can be incorporated efficiently in our workflows. So I'm excited to talk about that, and I'm excited to learn from you all.
Wonderful. Thank you guys again. I'm really, really excited about this topic. As you have noticed, AI is becoming central in recruitment, from simply resume screening to the chat box when you're visiting the website. Actually, in one of my classes, we talked about how the Harvard Business Review says that AI tools can streamline processes, but raise new questions about fairness and candidate perception. Bridget, from your perspective, how would you briefly define AI in recruitment? And what role do you see it playing today?
So I love this question because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there. People are afraid of AI and building it into their workflows. So when we talk about AI in recruitment and selection, we're not talking about computers taking over the human or the recruiter's work. We're really talking about the technology that can be learned from candidate data in a mass volume amount to make us smarter and faster. So things like screening resumes, scheduling interviews, analyzing candidate responses. These are all these are the AI tasks that come to my mind right away, but it's actually morphing all the time and getting more sophisticated. So I think when we think about AI, initially we're thinking efficiency and consistency. And this is typically the first way that companies will implement AI. They start pretty simply into the process, taking away a lot of the mundane data-driven tasks. So for example, in our company, we consistently have over 100 roles open and only a recruiting team of about 5 dedicated recruiters. So using AI helps us process thousands of applications in seconds and identify candidates whose skills align with specific roles, something that would take recruiters days or weeks. I remember when we used to go through the resumes piece of paper by piece of paper, And when we had such a large stack, we would actually just look at the schools first. We'd be like, okay, we're only going to be looking at, for lack of a better example, Harvard, and everything else we're going to throw away. And that was like our first way of eliminating to make our stack get smaller. But if you think about that, it's actually very inefficient and very biased. And so to bring in AI and to get rid of those old traditional ways of looking at resumes, I think it's actually more transparent for the candidate and for the company to make those thoughtful decisions equally. Yeah, I think overall, when AI's purpose isn't to replace the human side of hiring, it's really to enhance it.
That's a great point. Really a great point. From an IO researcher perspective, Faustina, how is AI commonly being applied in recruitment?
So, as you said, AI is really increasingly being used to help with the efficiency of recruiting. In terms of scope, it was actually found that 65% of recruiters are using AI in some aspect of their recruiting process. And that number is really only going up as the AI craze increases and people learn new strategies to utilize AI in their recruitment process. Tools that utilize AI are used for a wide variety of aspects of the recruiting process. So, this includes candidate sourcing, screening very large candidate pools, as Brigitte mentioned, helping to understand assessment results and predictive analytics. So, taking those assessment results and matching candidates with different jobs, seeing where they would fit the best, and even things like scheduling. It really just helps with the efficiency of all of these different tasks within recruiting.
Got you. Christina, from your view, what do you think people get right or wrong when they describe AI's role in hiring?
Well, going back to what was said previously, definitely what it gets right is handling the smaller administrative noise, right? The screening of the resumes, the scheduling of the interviews, the summarizing. But, with that, it's not always great, right? Faster doesn't always equal fairer. As to Bridget's point earlier about the more analog practices being biased just because of the sheer volume of applicants, we know that AI is built on historical patterns. So if those historical patterns of bias are already there, it's going to be programmed into the AI platform and it's only going to perpetuate that bias. Many companies treat AI as a neutral thing when in fact it can silently magnify the inequalities that we have if it's not closely monitored. We also have a trust gap. Candidates don't always understand how AI evaluates them, or it can make the process seem unclear to them. Data shows that perceptions of fairness drop significantly when people think a machine and not a person is the one that made the decision. So, yes, AI can assist, but it should never decide. We need to be weary of an over reliance on purely rational and automated systems and selection. Human beings bring in context, we bring in empathy and ethical reasoning that data alone cannot replicate.
That's an interesting perspective. Would either of you, Bridget, Faustina, would you disagree or see it differently?
I definitely wouldn't see it differently. I think I would expand on her point and just point out that, AI is not perfect, but either are our colleagues, right? So I have a colleague that their strength maybe is more technical and their weakness might be understanding the context and the possible growth of a candidate. And I have another colleague that might be the opposite of that. And so I think when we think of AI, it's not meant to make it a perfect system, it's just to make it a better system. And so I don't think we ever want to take out the human element, but we do want to make us better. And so that we do have less biases. I think that's really important. And it is one of our main principles at Elite is that we want to eliminate bias and keep things very equitable.
So I think when considering human touch, it's really about applicant perceptions, as was mentioned, and negative applicant reactions to the recruiting process have a lot of negative effects. It's been shown to increase withdrawal, rejection of positions. It damages the employee branding towards candidates. often reduces the higher quality. So it's really important to consider how applicants are reacting to your process. And this means designing your selection process in a way that reflects your organizational values. So you really want to make sure that you are delivering the right message to your candidates. These kinds of things can be mitigated by including things like human touch points. Even when you're using AI, make sure that real people are reaching out to candidates throughout the process, providing regular feedback to candidates, giving candidates an opportunity to display their strengths, and really being transparent with them about the recruiting process and how decisions are being made.
Okay, so let's get specific. Because we clearly have two very different HR perspectives here. We have one of you who's using AI and one of you who isn't. Bridget, can you give a real example of when AI made something better or worse for a candidate?
Sure. I actually have an example that stood out that happened last year. And I would say it's both a better and worse situation and why we have checks and balances at Elite. So we had a candidate applying for a data analyst role, and the AI pre-screen flagged her as a borderline fit. We have three different fits. We have great fit, borderline fit, and not fit. So the AI pre-screened her as a borderline fit. And because her resume didn't have the exact keywords for specific software tools, she was put in that middle bucket. But part of our workflow is that recruiters don't just review the great fits screened by AI, they review those borderline fits as well. And that's one of our ways to catch the biases. So our recruiter noticed that she had strong analytical certifications and project experience in a similar system. So we ended up pushing her through the interview process. Because we had a human review process built into our AI workflow, which is very important, she got that second look and she ended up being hired. And she's now one of our top performers and a huge culture champion. So that experience really reinforced to us why balance matters. And yes, AI gave us the speed and structure and it flagged her, which could have taken days to eventually find her resume in the first place. But ultimately, the recruiter is what gave her a chance. So the human is who gave her a chance. So we actually often reflect on this situation, and she's like our Jane Doe situation, our test, our pilot, so to speak, anytime we implement a new AI algorithm or structure, because we want to see, will this new system give her, our Jane Doe, a second look? And if it doesn't, we actually rework it to make sure that she does get that second look. So we learned from that experience, and now we're taking it in the future with us.
Oh, gotcha. I see. Yeah. So Christina, why have you chosen not to adopt AI so far? Do you see that as preserving more of the candidate's human experience?
So it's not that we're anti-technology, we're just pro accountability, right? So we've reviewed dozens of digital tools and we've concluded that most of the tools currently available lack proper validation for predicting performance or reducing bias. We're also wary of the black box systems that AI have, right? So the systems make these decisions, but no one can actually really explain in depth how it's come to that decision. A recent article in the Journal of Business Ethics called out the connection between a lack of transparency and how that leads to accountability gaps. So if an AI tool discriminates, who actually takes the responsibility? And if we can't explain how or why an AI tool made a decision, we're in very dangerous territory. Both legally defensible um, items and fairness perceptions depend on an organization's ability to clearly describe where AI was used, what data was analyzed, and how did humans review the outcome. If a candidate later challenges a hiring decision, say claiming discrimination, HR and the power in IT and all the powers that be, they must be able to clearly trace and justify every step in that process. Without that level of clarity, the company has no real defense. And it's already been happening, right? States like New York, Illinois, they've already required bias audits or candidate notification when automated hiring tools are used. So where we're at right now, if we can't prove our process is explainable and fair, we're just not willing to be ethically exposed. There's also a fairness concern, right? Studies show that people with less computer experience often perform worse on AI-driven assessments. And it's not because they're less qualified, but it's because they're less comfortable with the technology, right? So we're looking at people from lower socioeconomic classes, applicants from different cultures, different communication styles. These folks can be penalized when systems prioritize standardization over substance. When we keep humans involved, we make sure talent isn't lost in automation bias. And from a brand perspective, it doesn't fit who we are. So automation can send the wrong message, right? Selection design signals company values. When a candidate enters the onboarding or the recruitment process, that is their first personal impression with us. And even if a candidate isn't hired, we want them to have a good impression so that they can continue to spread by word of mouth that we're a good organization. An overly automated process to us says we value efficiency over people. And for now, we just rather hire a little slower to maintain trust, dignity, and personal connection with our candidates. Efficiency can be regained, but a reputation is hard to rebuild.
Faustina, Brigitte, will either of you challenge that? Do you think those benefits come at a cost at all?
So I definitely agree that branding is really important for a company. And I appreciate, Christina, that you're really valuing your company brand and want to do things that align with that brand. However, I do think that there is a cost of not including some form of AI technology in the recruiting process in some aspect. That can also be in whatever aspect your company is comfortable with. And that's not to diminish the importance of validating that technology and ensuring that it is fair. However, in this increasingly technological world, if you're not using AI in some aspect, you're likely going to fall behind and miss out on valuable candidates that are going to go to other companies that can hire them faster and more efficiently.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall, one thing that we have to keep in mind is things also, business comes down to the bottom line and the dollar. And I think if you're looking at what's the most efficient way to do business, I think you have to incorporate AI somewhere. But it is, to Christina's point, it is important not to lose that human touch. And so, as I said before, it's just really important that you build in workflows that make sense and that are balanced. So that way you keep the transparency and the focus on the human element as part of the process. So I think overall, we also need to keep in mind too, AI sounds so scary, but we've been using computers for a long time to help us in the selection and recruiting process. And I think we just need to get over this hurdle of it being scary. And then we can have more companies realizing that it's actually to their benefit.
You all are really bringing up great points here. I love this. But let's debate this directly. Do you think AI can actually enhance human connection and hiring? Or does it automatically risk reducing it?
Oh, I absolutely think that it enhances the process and makes more time for human connection. There's only a 40-hour work week. And when we're moving through candidates very fast, to take out that time to process all of the paper pushing and data processing, we're really making more time for connecting with candidates and learning about their growth and their career trajectories and what are their values and what's important to them. When you don't have time to do that, and you're only looking at a piece of paper as the human, you're wasting all that valuable time that you could be learning about the candidate and getting that context that you wouldn't get from their resume.
Yeah, I really think it depends, right? It depends on the intent of the use of AI. So we already know that about 65% of recruiters now use some form of AI, and this is based on data from SHRM. But at the same time, we also know that most candidates say they want more human contact and not less, right? So the gap isn't about the tech itself, it's about how organizations choose to use it. And when AI is implemented simply to move people through faster, it often strips away empathy and personalization. I really commend Bridget for what she said when it's used to free up recruiters' time so that they can have deeper, more meaningful conversations with candidates. That is actually enhancing the connection rather than replacing it. And many candidates already feel that AI driven assessments and selection systems are alienating and stressful themselves, especially when they don't get feedback afterwards. So having that human touch to compensate, right? To fill those gaps where time was spent in the recruiting process is very important. Imagine spending hours like a lot of companies use the video interview screening tools. Imagine spending hours on a video interview that is scored by an algorithm only to never hear back from that company. That's not progress, right? That's an alienation, and it's alienation at scale. So yes, AI can enhance human connection if it's used thoughtfully. But right now, too many organizations automate more and communicate less. And that result is creating a recruiting process that's faster, but it's emptier, it's efficient, but it's emotionally disconnected.
Yeah, so I think this is a really important point to make. Data actually shows that 85% of HR professionals think AI will replace some part of recruitment, and 77% think that humans will eventually be replaced by AI in recruitment entirely. So it's really important to look at this data because replacing humans will cause some form of resistance. So it's really important to frame AI as an assistant to that human touch rather than a replacement. I don't think that AI should entirely replace humans in any context, but especially in recruiting. We want to consider how AI is being marketed to your company. We don't want our own employees to think they're being replaced by AI, in addition to how it's being marketed to candidates. So, like we've said before, transparency ultimately is the most important thing when integrating AI. So, how AI is being used, why it's being used, and how humans are still being involved in the process. We don't want our candidates to believe that the system is unfair towards them because of the integration of AI. So we want to still involve humans in this process. And I think that the efficiency that AI can provide can allow for more human opportunity as well.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about equity, bias, and trust. I read some studies that suggest AI can both mitigate and perpetuate bias depending on how algorithms are designed and monitored. Faustina, from your perspective, what does the research say about bias in AI-driven hiring?
So I think there's a lot of positive ethical impacts that AI can have on recruiting. It can help to standardize the process, so giving all candidates the same treatment. Recruiting decisions are also less reliant on that gut feeling and more reliant on actual data. And then you can potentially also have a larger geographical or candidate reach so that more candidates are able to be considered. However, there are also a lot of ethical risks that we need to be wary of, like we mentioned earlier, AI algorithms can reproduce human biases if they're trained with biased data. So it's really important to audit that data that's used to train the AI. There's also black boxes that AI creates that I know Christina mentioned already. So we don't always fully understand how AI comes to the decisions that they end up at. And that can really cause a problem, especially with legal issues that come about from adverse impact. And when there is adverse impact, there's accountability problems. Who is responsible for that adverse impact? Because we can't necessarily tell AI that it's responsible. Someone, a real person, needs to take accountability for those legal issues. Also, in this technological world, companies feel a rush to use AI tools and might not necessarily validate them rigorously as much as they need to be. There are a lot of issues that we need to be concerned with, and we need to ensure and validate that our AI tools are leading to ethical hiring decisions.
So would you say if research suggests bias can go either way, what does that mean for practitioners? Should they lean into AI or avoid it?
I don't think people should be afraid of AI, but they should ensure that the tools that they're using are really being tested to ensure they're not reproducing bias. We also want to utilize human oversight and include meaningful human interactions throughout the recruitment process. And it's important to understand the limitations and ethical implications so we know how to catch it and mitigate it. So we want to be monitoring the recruitment process. This includes tracking candidate feedback, fairness outcomes, diversity metrics, and then using that data to make updates to the system.
Gotcha. Okay. So Brigitte and Christina, do you think candidates actually trust AI-driven process, or do they expect a human to still be in the loop?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this first, but I also want to make a point too that Faustina had mentioned about using AI and avoid and helping to prevent those biases. And I think once you have a system, it's really important that you flip your role and try and break that system. Like, how can I have the process be biased and try and break your test? And so that way you can find those gaps. We always do that where we'll come up with a system and then we try and find a way that system doesn't work. That has helped us in many ways. But to go back to your question, I think the candidate trust really depends on transparency and communication. Most people are open to AI being part of the process. They just don't want to feel like they're being judged by the black box, as you said. When candidates know that AI is being used and how it's being used, what it evaluates, and that humans are still involved, their comfort level goes way up. So at Elite Financial, one way, that we are upfront about it is that we provide a short overview, or we'll even put it into our JDs, our job descriptions sometimes, explaining how AI supports us and not replaces the recruiter. And I think this small step has made a really big impact because it's showing respect, it's building credibility with that candidate, and it reminds them that there's still a person behind the process, and we're reminding them of that. So I'm really big on transparency and communication, and I know Cristina and Faustina have mentioned those two key words a lot as well. So I think we're all in agreement.
Well, I'm kind of in agreement, Bridget. Trust is already really low. Applicants, they don't trust AI to make fair hiring decisions. Even even more are uncomfortable with being interviewed by an AI chatbot. Like, while many HR organizations like to say that they love the efficiency of AI, they also say that candidates expect a human touch point at key stages of the recruitment process. It we really have to pay attention to what our candidate pool needs, definitely holding on to that transparency. But if you're working with a group of candidates who is not tech savvy, you're going to need to think of ways to mitigate that, right? And with that, I really feel like it's important to offer a parallel route for those candidates who do request human touch or human reconsideration, especially if the need for an appeal for an automated result comes up. That goes back to what we were saying earlier about litigious action. We need people to be part of every step. So that way, if things come up, we know who to look for and who to go to for that clarification. And without the option for candidates to really know who exactly is their point of contact, who is over that specific phase of the recruitment process, that's just going to continue to erode trust. It's going to erode trust for the company and the brand, but it's also going to erode trust for AI itself, right? When people feel powerless, they don't want to continue moving forward, and we want to empower people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that sentiment. But I think ultimately, too, you have to be asking yourself what kind of candidate you are trying to attract. And at Elite and many other top companies, they're already using AI in their workflows. They're already using AI even outside of selection and recruitment. They're using it, I mean, algorithms, trading, all of that is now pre-programmed and companies are using AI. There's a lot of chat GPT AIs built internally. And so for us, we don't actually want to attract those candidates that are afraid of AI because that's how we do our daily business. So I do realize that we're going to get some people that just don't want to work with us because maybe we're not in sync in that regard, where we are AI focused and they might not be. And that's okay. We might end up losing out on a candidate. And I think that we'll be better for it and they'll be better for it. I think that's the whole point of selection and recruitment, right? Is selecting the right people and the right fit for your company. And for us, AI needs to be a part of it because it's part of our job.
So it feels like transparency may solve it. Christina, what if we told candidates exactly how AI is being used?
Well, transparency helps, but I don't think it's enough, right? There was a recent article that said, that transparency has to include accountability, right? It's what we've been saying this whole time. Who oversees the system? How is fairness measured? What bias audits are there being conducted? Or is there any recourse that exists for bias found in the AI platform? I do agree with Bridget. We have to explain to candidates very clearly how AI is supporting and not replacing the recruitment process, giving them a clear understanding of the purpose of using AI. But a clear communication about AI's role, it doesn't necessarily improve perceptions of fairness that candidates feel, even if they see or don't see the change in outcomes by the use of AI, right? So that continues to perpetuate that mistrust that we might see our workforce experiencing when it comes to AI and recruitment. And it's not just about telling people we use AI, but really showing them we care about you. And you can't do that without fully engaging the human experience as part of the recruitment cycle.
So in IO psychology, we always have to focus on the future of hiring. Researchers have argued that organizations must integrate technology thoughtfully to balance efficiency with humanity. If we look ahead 10 years from now, do you think the best candidate experience will be human led, AI led, or truly hybrid? Christina, we'll start with you.
So I definitely think that the best candidate experiences will be human led, right? AI is going to evolve, but hiring is ultimately about trust and belonging. And so these are things that machines can't authentically create. They cannot manufacture these feelings. And you need the human touch. AI's predictive validity still lags far behind human evaluation, especially in nuanced and high stakes roles. We knew that decades ago that intuition and professional judgment are irreplaceable, especially in talent decisions, right? Like these are skills that people have or don't have. And so when you have a recruiter who does have that personal and professional judgment, it's irreplaceable. You can't program that. You can't program that intuitiveness into a machine. We also need to reinforce that interpersonal warmth and fairness perceptions are what drive acceptance more than efficiency ever could. So when you have a candidate coming into a role as a new hire, do you want them to come in feeling alienated as it is off the gate, or do you want them to feel like they've already become part of the work culture, the organizational culture, just through the onboarding process? So I see AI as a toolkit, right? It's not transformation. The moment we let it lead, we've lost the heart of recruiting. And we really need to make sure that that humanity remains in the recruitment process.
Yeah, that's an optimistic view. Bridget, why might you see that different if you do?
Honestly, I think the best candidate experience is similar to what Christina said. It's going to be a blend and it's going to be a tech and touch model. So AI is going to take care of logistics and scheduling interviews, analyzing skills in seconds. And even now, we're looking at ways that it can give us a value for culture fit. But the magic is still going to be in those human moments, those conversations that are taking place one on one, and where your instinct, your human instinct come in. And I think that's why we need AI to always be in the process, because AI is going to make time for that, for those conversations and that empathy to be known and be a part of the process. We of course have to be careful not to hand over the keys completely. If we let AI drive recruitment or anything without supervision, we'll end up with a very structured process that's efficient, but it's going to be soulless, and we are all humans. So we definitely are never going to lose that human touch, even seek to want to lose that. At the same time, to not use AI in the process is archaic, right? Because everything is changing. Everything is going to be using AI, not just us in recruiting, but that is the future, AI. And as humans, we just need to know how to use AI wisely. So I always say this to people who are hesitant. It's like GPS. Do you use GPS when you're navigating a city on your own vacation, or you've got to go to a restaurant that you've never been to before, right? Versus like printing out an old school map or just bringing a map book. GPS is going to get you there faster, but you are still the driver. You are still the one driving the car. And so that's the same thing I say in the recruitment process is, and also just going back to your question, is it human led, AI led, or hybrid? It's going to be both because it is right now. It's still going to be that same, it's going to look different, but it's always going to be both.
I agree with both my colleagues here. I don't believe recruiting should ever be fully AI led. Like we've mentioned already, the human touch is so important, but AI should be used as a resource that can enhance our human capabilities. As AI is integrated into recruitment, that human interaction becomes even more important to the candidate experience. I think we're moving towards hopefully a hybrid world of human and AI led recruitment.
And I have to say, I'm personally torn. I read an article last week. High host pointed out that hiring decisions are never purely rational. There's always a human element. So before we wrap up, one quick lightning round. In one sentence, what's one thing organizations should do right now to ensure candidate experiences stay human, even as AI evolves? Christina, you first.
Make every automated step have a human counterpart, a clear explanation, a real point of contact, and a person in the loop, because only people can create trust.
Bridget?
Yeah, so first I just want to say I love that. Yeah, there needs to be human contact. I agree with that. Also, I think build transparency and communication into every step. Candidates need to know where AI ends and where people begin.
And Faustina.
I think it's really important to ensure a recruitment process that is open to questioning and really include conversations with candidates about the process and how it works and why it is the way that it is.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And listeners, thank you for joining another rich discussion about people, technology, and future work. This concludes another episode of Workplace Wired. I hope you enjoy and join us next week, same place, same time.